So today I want to talk about what goes into putting on a show. Because for a lot of people, they don't really understand what goes on behind the scenes to get a show off the ground. They think, rehearsal and, hey, kids, let's put on a show. But there is a lot that goes into it. Even a simple show has a lot of moving parts. We don't always think about what other people's jobs are. We just see the end result, and people who are good at it, they make it look so easy, and that goes for any job. Um, so easy, in fact, that a lot of time we look at other people's jobs and say, "Oh, I could do that. That looks so easy." But really, let's be honest. We don't want people to think our job is easy. Most of the time, it isn't. It's easy for us because that's what we do, and we've put tons and tons of hours and tons of time into that job. So, yeah, for us, it's easy. And yes, it could be easy for somebody else too if they put in tons and tons of hours. Uh, but most things, most new skills, you don't get it in one, and they're not easy off the bat. So what goes into putting on a show? Um, so you start obviously with uh, selecting a script. There are thousands of titles out there. Some of them are uh, public domain, which means you don't have to pay royalties on them. They're out, they're available. You can find them online. You can find them at the library. Um, there used to be a compendium put out every year, best shows of. A lot of those older shows are now public domain and royalty free, so you can take them to the copy center, make copies for your cast, and do the show without having to pay anybody without having to order scripts or anything like that. Um, a lot of those shows are fun. I've done a couple of those shows. I think the last I think the last public domain show that I did was a show called Seven Keys to Baldpate, which we the director updated the references a little bit and we modernized it. I want to say it was a show from the 1930s, 1940s. Man, it was hysterical. I mean, it was just an absolute scream. Um, so some of those shows can be a lot of fun. But you got to read a lot of scripts to find the good ones, and you've got to make sure that they are royalty free because even though they're in those compendiums, they might not. There's somebody might still own the rights to those, or the families may still own the rights to those. So reading the scripts and finding a script. Writing a script is always an option, a lot harder than it looks. If you've ever tried to write a paper that entertains anyone, if you've ever tried to write a letter sometimes. Think about how hard that is, and now try to maintain that for 60 to 120 pages. It's hard stuff. So you find your script, and let's assume you have your space, whatever your space is, small space, big space. We've talked about spaces, storefront, uh, gym, church basement. You've got a space. Yeah, you've got a space. You find your performers. If you are already part of a program, you have a group of performers to draw on. If you are uh, like a community group, you put out audition notices, call your friends, put out emails. We're assuming that this is for non-professional groups. Um, you get people to come and audition, and you decide who's going to be in your show. You cast your show. Then you're putting out your rehearsal schedules. You decide upon your rehearsal dates. You decide upon your show dates. I'm sort of trying to put this in order, but not necessarily. Um, Uh, your show dates need to fit into your calendar. For us, we do 6 to 8 shows a year. We try to line that up with the other schools in our district so that we're not overlapping because we don't want to super saturate our community with performances. We want as many people to come and see everything as possible. Um, but we've got three other, so there's four total um, high schools that do shows. So we do more. They typically do, and our smaller school does one. Um, then the other ones do two or three, sometimes four. Um, so we're trying to fit that calendar together, and then we have to fit the show dates into the larger calendar for the school because we want to, so there are things that we have to share with. We share our space, so the music department has their concerts, the dance department has shows. We try to avoid major things like, well, dances, proms, obviously graduation. Um, we're working around breaks and days off. Uh, what else have we have actually postponed a show because our football team got into the state championship. We won, by the way. Um, so we like that was a great day because we loaded up on buses and we all went to Camp Randall and cheered while we won. So that was very cool. Um, so there's a lot of just to fit the shows into the calendar. So when something like a show gets canceled because of any reason, for any reason, whether it's, a football game or bad weather, because that happens here in Wisconsin, uh, and you have to try to fit that in. Sometimes you can just let it go. If it's one performance, you might just have to let it go. That's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Um, but when it's a whole weekend, and sometimes you only get one weekend. Usually we try to do 2 weekends, um, but sometimes if it's a whole weekend, you don't want those kids to lose that opportunity. So you want to find a place to put it somewhere else in the calendar. There's a lot of stuff in the calendar, so you have to work around that. Um, so you find your time slot for your show. You set aside your rehearsal period, usually 6 to 8 weeks. You have to find or decide whether or not you're going to do it yourself. In high schools, a lot of people, it's, they're one-man shows, and God bless them. Um, you've got set design, lighting design, costume design, sound design, increasingly projection design. Um, some of those things are rentable. You can find them. You can certainly rent drops. Now you can rent projections, projected scenery, just like you used to be able to rent drops. You still can rent drops. There are, in certain pockets of the country, places that do scenery rentals. So you could rent the whole show. Pardon me. We're trying to put together uh, I've got a Facebook page called the Scenery Exchange, so we can try to pool resources. We share with local colleges um, and other high schools, so we are constantly borrowing from each other. We are fortunately stuck right between Chicago and Milwaukee, so we have a lot of professional resources we can rent from. Um, Borrowing is obviously better than renting, so if you have that ability, that's great. So you got to find all of the design elements. You want to have your design done well before you start rehearsing, so that the director knows what they're working on. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. Um, if you're a musical, you have to purchase the music, or as in purchase the rights to use the music, and the actual sheet music itself, so that you have something to play off of. There are recordings available. You have to buy those. There is also Orchestra. We call it Orc in a Box. That's the computer program that plays the music, and you have somebody running it, so you can change the tempo. I know it's a lot of jargony stuff, but for those of you that know what I'm talking about, or just straight up digital recordings. Um, if you are doing a musical, you have to plan time to teach. So you have to have somebody who can read and teach music to teach the kids how to sing the music. Um, I remember taking a whole lot of CDs home in high school, and that's how we learned music. But that is not always the case. But if that's what you got, then that's what you got. You have to have time to build your scenery, hang your lights, just like you have to have time to rehearse. So you have to have time, either a space off-site of your theater, or if you are building it in your theater, um, you have to have time and people. That requires a lot of people. Parent volunteers are wonderful in high school. Student volunteers are wonderful. Again, if you've got local colleges and other theaters who might have stuff, or people who could come over and help you out, you can also hire people. That is expensive. Um, There, let's see. So you've got you have your designs figured out. You are rehearsing. You have your space figured out. You have to plan time to get your set. If you're not building it on in your space, you have to plan a couple of days. Usually, it's great if you have a week. We've done it in as short as a day. That's very hard, but it's doable. You move all of your stuff into your stage and you get that all set up. Then you have, we call it Hell Week, it's Tech Week, where you are, wow, 10 minutes, where you are putting your scenery together, your lighting together, all of your technical elements. Um, Ideally, you are not focusing on acting at that point because it is just about getting that tech element together. Then you have to have people to run all those tech elements. That's a whole different group of people from usually from your cast. Hopefully, they are people that care about being backstage and telling that part of the story. That's what I do, so that's what I get really excited about. I'm one of those sick puppies that really loves Tech Week, um, figuring out those problems, making the things happen so that the story is really fluid on stage. I love that, and hopefully you give yourself enough time to do that. Um, you have to consider your front of house. That's your ticket sales, publicity. Um, there are ticket sale programs now that you can do all of that online for a fee. You have to have programs, figure out printing. We are fortunate we have the school print shop. We do have to pay for it, but we can send everything to them and they take care of it and they're wonderful. We also get our posters are designed. We send our information to our media people at the district level and they take care of that for us. But if you're not one of those people that are fortunate enough to have that kind of a backing behind you, you have to go out, do it yourself, or find somebody to do it yourself. People to run your front of house. We have a wonderful group of parents who deal with our front of house. They handle, we call them parent coordinators. They handle the front end. They handle our concessions. They handle our memorabilia. They take care of the front of house so we don't have to think about it. But a lot of times that's one person. So if you don't have a parent coordinator, if you don't have that parent support or that community support or that school support, you are a one-man show. So again, all the props to the people who do this as a one-man show. Um, So there is so much that goes into getting one show on stage. We look at it, a lot of times people look at it as being, oh, there's clearly there's a director because you know there's got to be somebody in charge, and there are all the actors, and that's all that goes into it. But, ooh, no, no, so much not. And we haven't even started talking about stage managers who are really the, that's just the workhorse position, and God bless all the stage managers in the world because they are the most patient, knowledgeable humans to be feared in my mind because they run everything. They have to know what every other job is doing and how to do it in case they have to step in. So these are getting longer and longer. So this turned out to be a little bit longer than I wanted to, but it's important to know what goes into it. That's not to say that's not, and I don't say this all to make it sound scary because it can be as simple as a group of people getting together to tell a story. It can be that simple. Um, but when you know what goes into it before you jump into that pool, at least you know how deep the water is and where you're going to be swimming. So, and I just like people to understand what we do and how many parts there are to it. And the the bigger you scale, um, the more parts there are, and the more impressive the the 12 kids on stage and the one director are when you think about all of the stuff that has to happen to make it real. So, have a great one, and I'll see you next time.